A Boomer Ellie video.
Well, now that the holidays are finally over, I've noticed that a lot of my friends are really in need of a major emotional reboot. They all seem to be still upset about visits from their relatives over the past few weeks, and it's really more than just upset. I've been hearing major bitching about my damn parents, my damn siblings, and my damn kids. Now, we didn't have any overnight guests this year, but I know where they're coming from. You know, I know how relatives can ask those questions that really get under your skin. You know, just to mess with your mind, they'll ask you some mean-spirited question like, well, what's for breakfast? What's for breakfast? Okay, you know, no big deal on the first day, and on the second day maybe just a little irritating. But by the third day, what's for breakfast? You know, you're not hearing that anymore. What you're hearing is, Cinderella, where's my breakfast? And what you'd really like to tell them is where they can shove their breakfast.
Who ordered the Grand Slam?
But you don't say that because they're your relatives, and it's really much too early in the week for the major family blow-up. And, you know, later that night when you're asking your husband or your wife if they're willing to help you commit a murder, they're going to remind you that the relatives are only there for a week, and you probably just need a little quiet time by yourself. So, the next morning, you get up very early, and you sneak downstairs so you can have your morning cup of coffee and read your paper in peace. But you really can't relax because you know the relatives are going to show up, and they do. But they promise they're not going to bother you, and then they'll do one of three things. They'll either keep talking while you're trying to read the newspaper, or they'll start reading the newspaper, just the section that you want to read, and they're going to make a mess of it before you get to it, or they're going to tell you to relax. They're going to make their own breakfast this morning, which is really the worst option because you're not going to get to relax. First, they're going to ask you, oh, where do you keep the frying pan? And where do you keep the eggs? And where do you keep the butter? Yeah, we keep the eggs and the butter out in the tool shed. Where do you keep the eggs and the butter? Finally, just to shut them up, you blurt out, look, why don't I make breakfast? Well, okay, if you really want to. So, you leave your coffee to get cold, and you start cooking, and you're going to do something simple like scrambled eggs. But are they just sitting there? Mm-mm. They're standing right next to you. And that's when they ask the question, is that really how you make scrambled eggs? And that's when you wonder, can you really kill another human being with just a spatula? But why bother? You know there are more crazy relatives coming later that day, like your alcoholic brother or sister. You know, the one who's going to be sloshed before dinner comes, and they're going to feel like they have to blurt out some deep, dark family secret that they can't keep inside anymore because, after all, it's Christmas. And what better day to find out that Uncle Ned touched little Susie and you know where back in 1962 than when we were all together for the holidays. More plum pudding, everybody? Okay, so somehow you get through the week, and you take the last ones to the airport at like 3:30 in the morning because they've booked a 5 a.m. flight so they can save $10, and you get back home, and eventually you take down the tree, and the lights come down, and life seems to be getting back to normal. But now, it's a couple weeks later, and you're still worked up because you've realized that you're from a family that shares the same gene pool as the Munsters. Well, maybe it's time for your emotional reboot. Yes, your family's dysfunctional, but guess what? So is everybody else's. Just be thankful that you're the normal one. That's right, you're Marilyn Munster. You are the normal one in your family, right? As for getting along with everybody else in your family, well, that's what being in a family is all about. Learning to love crazy people. At least, that's what I think. Join us on Facebook and tell us about the nuts in your family, and I'll tell you about the nuts in mine. Guess what? I'm the normal one. Think about it. I'm Marc at boomeralley.com.
It's Boomer Ellie, love.